I'm going to do as closing government is to evaluate what happening in opening debate, right? First of all, opening debate never told you how K-pop industry works, so that aggressively oppose is justified to do in the very first place. Why status quo is really urgent other than big standardizations of fashion, for example, how physically attractions is going to, for example, works in the society. Second of all, they also lack of explanation how, for example, with you not aggressively oppose or aggressively oppose actually going to create a sustained change in the status quo, right? We as closing government, we're going to give extension about how this aggressively oppose is going to be open discussion and awareness, because it's really important in order for us to internalize our value as feminist movement. But before that, I'm going to give several clarifications to the opening oppositions. First of all, they don't want this aggressively oppose happen in the K-pop industry, because K-pop industry gives several pragmatic benefits. For example, how it introduced to the world that Asia beauty is also exists, that we also have the same level of standard, for example, like Western countries, and then therefore it leads to open choice for preference. Maybe it's true, but what is the problematic is that this preference only an additional to what we have now. There is not something unique about Asia beauty, for example, because what, for example, most Asian people look up to westernization. Therefore, for example, plastic surgery is commonly happen in K-pop industry because they want to look at as Western as possible, for example. And the proof is this, that the moment you have a tall body, for example, the moment you have a small face, for example, it just leads to how westernization standardize how people should look at the end of the day, right? Therefore, the open choice for preference isn't exclusive under opening opposition at all. Moreover, this doesn't impact to the society exclusively, right? Why? Because even if, for example, you open preference, there is several makeups that coming from Western or African industry, for example, this society will only stick to what they have now, because that is what something they already look up to, something they already internalize. Moreover, there is no harsh comment or, for example, harsh oppositions that's to say this to the society that what you do is wrong and that this standardization should not exist. You should be objective to the person. Therefore, the case from opening opposition should not stand in this debate. Now I'm going to go to explain to you how, for example, in closing government, what this aggressively means, right? Because opening government already clearly told you how, for example, this K-pop industry is really problematic, for example, there are criticisms and there's harmful. But there is lack of analysis upon what this aggressively should look like. Under closing government, we celebrate that the K-pop industry, how their achievement is looking in the status quo right now. But the aggressively means we oppose how, for example, the silent treatment upon harm situation that hampers the idol, for example, that happening in status quo. What we targeted is that the depiction they give towards men and women in the K-pop industry to their movies that include aggressive action in the relationship that being romanticized, that is very common till people normalize it. This is something that we should aggressively oppose, because unlike other industry, for example, like Indonesia, like the current Zahra movies, for example, already being banned. Therefore, K-pop industry is exclusively, dismissive about what is being, the patriarchal values really rooted deeply in the society. Therefore, K-pop is really exclusive for us to actually aggressively oppose. They still go with it with patriarchal value and never show a single rejection on that. But even if there's a rejection, it's too late and oftenly happen in a small amount of time that doesn't give necessarily impact toward this kind of people. Now I'm going to explain. So that's how our mechanism upon how we aggressively oppose. We just selectively oppose what is something that is backlashing our value, how is the backlashing the purpose of empowering society in the status quo. Now I'm going to talk about why we justify to do this, right? First of all, because why we justify to aggressively oppose the K-pop industry. First of all, because they are the representation of patriarchal system. This is only conceived by opening opposition by saying that this is supply and demand, right? What does it mean? It means this supply and demand is something that this agency try to fit in to the patriarchal value. Therefore, because they see that I have to have a big market, meaning I have to fit in with my society, it's much more likely bad under opening opposition, because this kind of agency already proven that they are the representations of patriarchal system, that they leads to they want the attraction of society to be engaged, for example, to the spread of their market, because they now, for example, society engaged to this kind of market because they see what the desire of them is now reflected in the industry, for example, that they see in day-to-day basis. We say it's really justified to aggressively oppose, right? Why? Because in the K-pop industry, there's a fans. The fans is aggressively also point out the idols still this kind of idol suffering and have a mental illness, for example. Therefore, when the moment your enemy is also aggressive, you also justify to be aggressive as well. This because you have to be bold, for example, in order for you to have create sustained awareness, for example, for people to actually attract attention towards something that why this is so problematic, why this is so urgent, why so many people talk about this. So we say the justifications is already bold under our side of the house. You should take credit on that. Now I'm going to my substantive, what open discussion and awareness, why it's exclusively happen under our side of the house. First of all, because some patriarchal system in K-pop is the patriarchal value is still covered, right? Meaning the open discussion is going to be better to the abolishment of patriarchal system in the society gradually. This even if, for example, right now there is a criticism, like for example, to the something patriarchal value in the K-pop industry, they never address to it because they, for example, people that speak out about this afraid because now they have been bullied by most of Korean citizens, for example. Because it's been silent, meaning the only way for us to actually make this blow up is to aggressively oppose. Because later on, people will question why, for example, this is going to be happen. And moreover, feminist movement also have the value of have this kind of interest to be bold so that people know what is their value, what is the empowerment that they want to pursue. This feminist movement, unwavering, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we need, because the reason why this kind of, for example, issue is being silenced is because we not bold enough in the status quo. Open discussion is going to be happen because this we're going to tell them how bad this value applies in real life. Why this open discussion works? It's because people now can see the bold statement that is constant and sustained. It's important so that people can internalize it. How? This kind of discussion will going to be hot topics. People will look up to it because now, for example, you engage in the social media so much. This sustained change in behavior is going to much more likely happen under our past because this kind of feminist movement will going to constantly monitoring the K-pop industry. Therefore, people will internalize it by themselves. Then sustained change going to be happen under our house. We're very proud to propose this motion. Thank you.
In 3, 2, 1. OO can win this debate if they can prove to us why when the moment we as feminist movement keep silent about the glorifications that happens in K-pop industry, such as if you want to be an idol, you need to be good looking, you need to be thin, that woman need to be feminine, for example, and how they also celebrate the extreme diet, like what happens to Sindong Super Junior that just eat one protein bar just because he is bigger than the other member, or on how the fans demand them to be as perfect as they can, told you that silence will just make this K-pop industry wilder in terms of shaping their entertainment industry. Opening oppositions need to defend that, but unfortunately they didn't, meaning they already lose in this debate, right? Because we see this is something that really bad, really dangerous if we keep silence, because we cannot at very least create a discussions or awareness to the fans, for example, because they're already being manipulated coming from the K-pop industry that over and over make them consume this kind of thing, right? OG already did a good job by saying that K-pop industry already create the beauty standard, for example, that already pressure a lot of women, but unfortunately they failed to explain how actually this K-pop industry works and how the step-by-step of it in terms to influence social preference or perspective about women. Hence, it's already harmed certain individuals, for example, then it's becoming the reason why we need to oppose this. CJ exclusive contribution is that we are the only team who told you how this K-pop industry works, on how they already become really cruel, for example, really evil, on how they shaping how this idol need to be, how the drama is always men that always becoming boss, for example, that woman just becoming, regular woman and cannot be something that higher from the woman or at least equal with the men, for example. B, we also told you how K-pop industry already influence society perspective, because when the woman society over and over consume K-pop industry, they will tend to think or see that, if you want to be beauty, you need to be like the K-pop idol, or if you want to, be thin, it is okay to you to do an extreme diet and so on and so forth, and how they actually already discriminate the other people that cannot fulfill that kind of standard. I think like I'm going to make my classes into 2 points. Number one, about the justification justification point, and also the lastly is about the impact, right? Number one, in justification point, OO claim that we don't necessarily oppose because this is not the fault of K-pop industry. There is still so many beauty standard coming from Western. For example, why we need to oppose just K-pop industry, right? Why this is really problematic? Number one, this debate is not about which beauty standard we need to oppose, because to begin with, this feminist movement is already oppose all of the beauty standard that already harm the woman, because the woman cannot express themselves to begin with, right? But we need to debate about on how we find a strategic agenda for feminist movement so we can have better progress. The reason why K-pop industry it is because K-pop industry is on everyone's eyes right now, how actually the popularity of this K-pop industry becoming something that really matter in the status quo. I think like we need to take the momentum so people can see our existence, right? Because when the moment we go to the African, like what opening opposition told you, meaning that we already lose the chance when the moment all of the eyes of the society it's already in the K-pop industry eyes, right? So we need to take all of the eyes coming from the society from this kind of K-pop industry, right? But second, they are saying that this K-pop industry just supply the demand of the society, so we cannot oppose it. I mean exactly, because they just care about rating, prove you that even if they doing something wrong and no one criticize them, they will continue it until the end of the day, and there will be no change, right, under their Saudi house. And the fans cannot change anything because they already manipulated by the glorifications of the K-pop industry itself, right? Meaning they support and accept anything from this K-pop industry, even if this K-pop industry already doing bad, for example, right? We do not like that opening oppositions cannot win this debate, right? Then OG coming telling that their justification point is because it's already make a lot of women cannot express their uniqueness, for example. But unfortunately, OG didn't tell us how actually when the moment we oppose this woman can suddenly express themselves. Because under closing government, we believe when the moment we already oppose aggressively, meaning that society will see that we don't need to make people look like in the K-pop industry, for example, they will appreciate no matter how woman looks like. For example, they don't have any parameter and so on and so forth, because they just see the woman as a woman, not something that have a beauty or not, because woman is beauty just the way you are, for example. Now going to the second classes, which is impact. I think this is really important classes. Number one, opening opposition, they say that it's going to make a preference. Maybe it make a preference because with K-pop industry, it's also make that Asian is it's also a beauty one, for example. Maybe it is true, but we say it's still going to be bad when the moment is already creating harm to a certain individual. When the moment we have we take a look just to the K-pop industry, meaning that people that far away from this kind of standard is not going to be is not going to get any benefits coming from this way. Because we say like we are okay with white or not, with K-pop or not, if they are not bring any harm to the individuals. But we see there already a harm coming from this K-pop industry on how society looks woman just something that objectified, like what happened to all of the K-pop idol that when the moment they are really handsome or they are really beauty, these fans just objectified them to begin with, right? Now going to the benefits coming from opening government. I think benefits that coming from opening government is that it will attract the other ally, right? I think we are agree, but unfortunately they never told us how actually this ally also will care about this K-pop industry to begin with. For example, we do not really see the tangible benefits or even the second benefits coming from opening government is and on how people can express their uniqueness and again unfortunately they never told us how actually the uniqueness is going to be bold and their side of the house. So what is the benefits coming from closing government, right? I think like the benefits that we create is really important, which is discussions. How discussions happening? Discussion happening toward the awareness, right? Meaning that when moment we criticize them, people will question and they will see that there's something wrong in K-pop industry, for example. That's becoming a momentum. People will saying that why K-pop industry just care about beauty, not about the talent, for example. It also can evaluate the K-pop industry itself. So this K-pop industry will think that talent is more important and so on and so forth. But second of all, and this is very important, is the improvement of our entertainment industry, not just K-pop industry. Because when the moment we let them K-pop industry is doing like this, meaning that all of the industry will do the same, right? We do not like that. We believe that when the moment we oppose it, all of the industry will see that this is something really bad and it's not okay to make a beauty standard or even doing something evil to our idols, for example. Really proud to propose these motions.